Hi there, this is Joanne Dennison, CMP, welcoming you to another episode of Sit in the Attendees Chair. And I want to welcome with me today in the podcast studio.
Pauline, hi.
And Pauline's one of our troopers and also just did a major podcast. We record more than one at a time, so I hope you take time to listen about her experiences traveling back to her home in France and back again and what she observed. It's quite interesting, especially if you haven't been traveling much at all and definitely out of the country. So appreciate you taking the time to research and think it through what would be helpful. And of course, also,
as always, Steve the Great,
whose birthday is today.
Happy birthday to me.
There you go. So, yes, happy birthday. So this is going to be one that I want to say slightly different. Are any two really the same? But it is the first week of September, and I'm going to title this one probably Here We Go Again. And I've kind of been alluding to this on some the past few weeks, but now I really see it happening. The next 3 to 6 months are not going to be what we had hoped they would be 3 to 6 months ago. And I've just been thinking about how it's going to affect me, how it's going to affect other people, both in the meetings and events world, personally, professionally. And Pauline and I were chatting before, and one of the things I was saying, and she seemed to agree, is the hardest part is because we genuinely thought we would be on the other side of this, all spring with the vaccines and summer, and July was just such a glorious month in so many ways, so many restrictions. People were going to weddings, traveling internationally, not wearing masks hardly anywhere because they were allowed to not wear a mask anywhere. And unfortunately, as we're going into fall and winter, which are not great times for a lot of people anyway, especially winter in anywhere where there's snow and cold weather, we're going to be dealing with a lot of the same things that we were dealing before. And that almost hurts worse than going through it the first time, because to a certain extent, the good thing is, the bad thing is we kind of know what to expect. And that's what's going to drag us down. And the good thing is, though, is we do kind of know what to expect, and we've learned a lot from going through it before. So I just wanted to share some thoughts, things I'm seeing, things I'm reading. This is one of these. I hope it gives you, I'm always hoping, they give you information that you can use in meetings and events, information that you can use in your career, maybe a few smiles, and in this case, maybe hope, and to figure out how to make this all go better. So here we go again. This is a modified version of last year in some ways. Other ways it may be modified, but not in the way we'd like in terms of escalating cases. We've been dealing with Delta and the escalating cases of Delta for a couple of months here in the U.S. now. And now I read the other day that at least 139 countries, I think, have evidence of the new variant, which I've never learned the Greek alphabet, but I believe it's pronounced mu, M-U. So there's another one going. And I want to stop here for a minute. And, if you choose that you don't want to listen to my podcast or be in my circle, I totally understand. But I wanted to state where I'm coming from. First of all, I've been a registered voter in the United States since I was 18. I have never been affiliated with a party. And I pretty confidently can say I never will. It was a decision I made very early on, and I've been a registered voter in, counted the other day, it's 5 or 6 states. I actively vote, and not just once every 4 years for a president, but I am not affiliated. I have never identified with a political party, so I don't know if that'll make you feel worse or better, but since we seem to have made everything in this whole battle with the pandemic political, I wanted to let you know where I stood. Steve and I are both fully vaccinated, and we will be going for the
Steve the Great.
boosters.
Mhm.
Thanks. I just pulled a blank on what the word
Yeah.
is. When it is time, because we do believe very strongly in the value of the vaccine, and what it can do. So I want to say that so you know where I'm coming from, and what I noticed over the past couple weeks is just weird little things would enter into ads or articles, and I thought, haven't really seen that in a couple of months. These are strange examples, but they were some of the ones that hit me. So Michael's Arts and Crafts Store, some of you are probably familiar with it, suddenly a couple weeks ago started advertising again, you can pick up curbside. And I thought, I haven't seen that in a while. And I didn't even know it was not on the ads until I saw it on the ads again. And I went, This past week, McDonald's is looking at shutting down their dining rooms in many of the states, and maybe eventually all the states or all the locations. I'm sorry, people, but if McDonald's is shutting down their dining rooms, and yes, I realize a huge part of their business is drive-through, and this past year even probably more so. And by the way, I live in a town that doesn't permit drive-throughs, so our McDonald's is a walk-in one. But for McDonald's to say, we're going to close our dining rooms because we think it's not a good idea to have them open, I was like, it's just weird for me, at least what hits me at times that makes me go, we're getting ready to go for a change. And even this one. So one chain restaurant that we have ordered out from a lot during the pandemic, although they need to change their carry-out containers. But other than that, we've ordered out from them probably pretty close to an average of once a week. So June or July, the coupons changed. Yes, I'm a coupon discount person. Whereas something that we'd been able to use on carryout and then carry out and in the restaurant suddenly became in the restaurant only. And I thought, okay, I get it. You know, the better coupon is for eating inside the restaurant because they want to get you in the doors. I get that, you know, drinks, and you're more likely to do add-on sales and everything. And then the September coupons came out. And they're back to carry out gets the same major discount. Have you seen any of this, Pauline? Have you sensed that some of the marketing and everything may be shifting?
I've noticed a lot more of like same day delivery type of thing from random stores. Or curbside pick. Yeah, I mean, you don't really wonder anymore, like, is curbside pickup available? You know, it's just sort of always is. Which I still haven't done. I don't know. I still like going into stores.
But do you think it's being promoted again? That's the thing. This is it. I doubt if Michael's ever stopped doing curbside.
Yeah.
But they weren't, like, promoting it. That was, I think, the thing that hit me. But that's interesting about the same-day delivery and everything.
I think I mean, now that I think about it, I don't do Michael's, I do Joann's.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
you know, same type of
Yeah.
thing. And I have their app, which they always send me stuff about sales and everything. And they always do remind, yes, curbside pickup is an option.
Yep. And I think you watch. Now you'll become very aware
yes,
of all
now
of
I
this.
will notice all that every time I get a
Yeah.
notification or an email.
And it was just like these random, like, things I would see over the past couple weeks that I sensed that they are preparing, and in their own ways are preparing us to go through. It's not going to be a total lockdown like it has been. It's not going to be, I mean, I think most stores and restaurants are going to remain open, most places, most of the time. But just these little changes signifying that something big is happening. So, you know, when I look at work, and I have even realized as I've sensed this going on the past month, first of all, you have to understand winter is not one of my favorite seasons. I'm definitely a spring person. You know, summer usually is too hot for me, but anyway, winter is definitely not my season. I need light, and of course, I live in the Northeast, so we're down to 13 hours of light on September 7th. So, winter, I've always struggled with my whole life, and there's no doubt in my mind that I have some of the seasonal disorder. I forget what the A stands for. Anyway, I mean, I've known my whole life that I am definitely impacted even by gray, rainy days and things like that. So I'm thinking about myself, maybe selfishly or maybe out of self-preservation, like what am I going to be doing the next 6 months to try to keep myself healthy in every way, mentally, emotionally, physically, and not go to too dark of a place. Because I certainly in the past 18 months have done my share of ups and downs over various things, and sometimes they got layered on top of each other and probably took me down harder and faster than they should have. And I know many, many people are going through that. And sometimes you may not even know what's going on or other people around you. But I think we need to think ahead to these next, 3 to 6 months ago. Okay, it is what it is. Excuse me. How can we prepare for it to get through, not just survive, but really actually get through? So let's talk about work some. And I've shared some of these same stories on some of the other podcasts, but cancellations are coming. Started seeing them about the first week of August. No, it was even July, I think, when that nurses convention in Orlando canceled on like a week's notice, 5,000 people. Excuse me. Hang on a second. Sorry to be coughing in your ear here. Lots of cancellations. We have to be prepared. Oh boy, my voice is really going. Okay, we'll get this. We have to be prepared to move any face-to-face meetings you have on the book in the next 3 to 6 months to at least hybrid, and I would not be surprised if a lot of them get changed to virtual or get canceled entirely. Again, determining what's an essential meeting could become a big thing. And this really affects meeting planners, I've seen this happening in the past couple weeks. I just remembered the other two stories I was thinking of. Meeting planners having to shift incentive trips from outside of the country into the country and then them still getting canceled. Cities changing their regulations, and so meetings being changed on a week. And I was explaining to Steve, people think we take a meeting, it's fully planned, what's the big deal? We move it from city A to city B, the agenda's the same. But I said to him, we have to look at the hotel, we have to figure out the floor plan, we have to assign new meeting spaces for everything, we have to do new BEOs for every meal and food and beverage function. It sounds like it should just be, we just pick it up from this hotel and move it to that hotel. You have to reestablish your contacts with your new CSM or ESM. There's just so much that does have to change. So there will be a lot of thought about what's an essential meeting. I also want to share with you that I have talked to 2 in the past week, people who are ESM CSMs at 2 properties, not related to each other in 2 different states. And both of them telling me the stories of how short-staffed they are to even service a meeting or event. And I actually heard 2 stories this very last week. One of them was, a city, one was moving from a city to another or whatever. But when the sourcing person sent out something, they only got one reply, and that hotel told them that they'd have to know by the end of the day because it would take them a week to find enough staff to work it. And then I talked to an ESM at a hotel who told me the same story from the ESM standpoint, that if they get a call for a meeting that's coming up pretty quickly, they have to tell the potential client, you need to make a decision immediately because it will take us a week to 10 days to fully staff your event. And I think what people think, because I know the first couple times I heard it, I was like, all we keep hearing is there's, 10 million jobs available, 8.4 million people looking for jobs. I believe those are the numbers I saw the other day. But, in August, the hospitality job status didn't change. And if you're one of the people that thinks nobody's working because they're getting too much money through unemployment, please try to find some of the very non-political articles written by economists that really show how this is all work. And I mean, what's changed and the researchers and everything like that. It's not just people being lazy and wanting to collect a free ride. Are there some of those people? Of course. But is it everyone? No. So, hotels are really struggling to find staff for lots of different reasons. This morning I was reading an article about hotels cutting more and more and more back on housekeeping for lots of reasons. But I think what we've been thinking is all the hotels are sitting there waiting for us to call and put a meeting or event there. They are going to be so happy to have us, and we're going to have so many good negotiating points from the planner standpoint. And they're just going to think we're wonderful because we brought a meeting back to their hotels. And yes, they would love to, but at the same time, they're struggling trying to figure out how to service your meeting. So, and still, I mean, like I said, I had heard 3 stories this past week around that same theme. 3 different states, 3 different groups, everything. So, having a meeting a week out may not fly. So it's really important that we think about things like that. Other things that are going to impact us, the EU, the European Union, reinstated restrictions for the U.S. 27 nations are in the EU. So if you're looking at having international meetings where you're going into the EU, good chance that's not going to work right now. And of course, there's a lot of U.S. restrictions as to who can come into this country too. Article this past week about put out by IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association. I know I garbled through it on a prior podcast. Anyway, they supported the European Union. What was the official name, Pauline? Do you remember of that thing? There it is. The EU Digital COVID Certificate. They said it is like the best thing out there, and everyone else, it should be the global standard for how these are being done. That's one of the key things, along with getting people to get vaccines or getting vaccines to people in certain areas of the U.S. and definitely around the world. A non-negotiable proof is really important. The report came out this past week from Freeman showing that controlled face-to-face meetings can be as safe as or safer than going to a grocery store or anything like that. But again, we're already reading about forgeries coming through for the vaccine card. So we need to have some of these things, and you need to be thinking about whether you are going to take control of your meeting and have mandated vaccines, testing, masks, some combination of the 3 to protect people. I strongly urge you to pay attention to the news. Well, it's weird because in the next section I'm going to talk about don't read the news. But pay attention if you are putting a meeting in a particular geographical area within the U.S., outside of the U.S., pay attention to what's going on with that area at least. Follow the government, see what they're requiring. Some of the places are going back to quarantine, requiring if you come into the area, you're supposed to quarantine for 5, 10, 14 days. Do they have quarantine over there? Oh, no, you had to test every 3 days in France, you said, right?
To get the pass, if you're not vaccinated, yes.
For other people coming, well, no, you just can't come into the country if you don't have one or the other.
It depends on which country you're coming from. I think the orange and red countries, there is some form of quarantine. I think the red ones, you have to quarantine for a whole week and then do a test at the end of that week.
Got it.
I could be wrong on level, but I know there's one of those levels where you have to do that.
So point being is people are not going to be able to move around easily. And there's going to be a lot of complications, and there's going to be, a lot of people, again, if not still, afraid to travel. And I think with these 2 new variants, that is escalating again. Um, Steve, what did you say about Labor Day? That there were more people flying or less? I know you read something on that the other day. It was a high fly weekend, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, which kind of makes sense. We know students go back to school, but it's going to be interesting to see. Flying has dropped tremendously in August from where it was in like July. So there, except for the Labor Day weekend, there's been a huge drop in flying again. So, people aren't traveling. They're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to think this out. But again, if you are going to pay attention to the news and you are involved in putting a meeting or event someplace else, you need to follow that geographical area to know what's going, because you need to be ready. If you read that they are considering putting a quarantine in, or they are considering, lowering the crowds. I know of one group that had to, cancel their event in the middle and I saw it going because I had read a week before that geographical destination was going to do that. So to me, it would have made more sense to cancel it before everyone got on a plane and got there, but that's me. So really, really, if you're going to pay attention to the news, at least follow the geographical areas that you have meetings and take it forward to the decision makers if you're not one of them, and let them know, hey, they're talking about this, and do we need to reconsider how this meeting's going to roll? So those are some of the things, I want to put out there work-wise in terms of thinking. At some point, probably in a next e-guide and everything. Also, of course, the whole, are we going to go back to work in the office? And I'm hearing more and more places that originally it said people would come back in September, now moving it to at least November. And I think, oh, why would you even make it November? Just make it January at this point,
I've seen that.
Yeah, because why bring people back in November when there's the holidays and and a lot of the country will have crummy weather. Like, if you're going to postpone it, let's just make it January and start with a clean slate, So a lot of people will continue working from home. And, of course, there's a big push from many to work from home because the number one benefit, I don't even know if benefit's the right word, that it says job seekers are looking for right now is flexibility. Where they work, when they work, et cetera. And actually, I've been hearing that from women for probably 30 years because of childcare and things like that. And it is usually women asking for it. So, working from home is probably going to continue. But again, that's one of the things we kind of figured out last year. So that part might actually be easier this year. And many, many, many of you suddenly went, wow, I like this work from home thing. Once we got the kids figured out and the pets figured out and whoever else had to work, and we had enough computers for everyone and potentially a printer and, all these things, it's like, wow, there's a lot of benefits. Now, I've been working from home pretty much for 30 years. So, yeah, Steve and I were set. We were already working from home. It was almost, I was so unaware of how people did not have offices set up in their house. We made a seamless transition into, that part because we were already there. That's what our day was. So, that part may not be so bad, and think about it for those of you who are going to be in the crummy weather states, which right now is pretty much every state, but for other reasons, not worrying about the ice and the snow and things like that could be a good thing. But I wanted to talk about a little also about professional and personal. Like I said, I've had my own bouts, as I think almost anyone has this past year. And if they say they haven't, it's probably either because they were really, really good at figuring this out before it ever started, or they may just not even realize that they went through a tough time in terms of their head and, emotion and things like that. When this all started last year, the very first virtual presentation I did was for MPI New England. And when we talked about it, it was the first week of April. And when we talked about it, we talked about what do we want this presentation to be? The world was going through a total unknown at that time. We were all so confused, hurt, scared, mad, pick anything. And I ended up creating well, that's pretty funny, creating a presentation called Creation is the Opposite of Destruction. And it, it it's free. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to watch it. It's about an hour, I think it is. And what I sat down and thought is like, okay, how do I deal with this when my world gets totally disrupted in a bad way? What helps me? What helps fix me? What helps soothes me? What helps give me hope? And I tell the story in the presentation about going through a significant bad time for a number of years, and then one thing was the final thing that kind of like, I don't know that I can really cope with all of this. And I happened to see this quote somewhere in a book I was reading that had nothing to do with it. It was a fiction book, but sometimes you get your messages all kinds of ways. And I think for me, when I have gone through significantly tough times, that idea of creation, the idea of some sense of control when you feel you have no control over anything, is really important. And for people in this industry, these are two things we're actually pretty good at. We are good at putting order and some version of control in place when chaos is resolving. And I was thinking, yep, usually the first thing I do when I feel my life is spun out of control and I'm trying to get it functioning again, first thing I do is, you all do too, you just don't realize it, make a list. I make a list. Things I want to do, things I need to do, things I can do that moment when I'm barely functioning. What's going to make me feel better? What's going to get me going again? Unfortunately, I still have things from 18 months ago that I haven't done, but I've done a heck of a lot else in the 18 months that I didn't even know would ever come to be. So making a list is, in my opinion, a good way. And you might have multiple lists. Like, this is my personal list. This is my professional list. This is what I need to do at work. This is what I want to get done around the house. It doesn't matter. But it's some sense of figuring out, where can I make a little difference? Because the reality is none of us are going to go solve on our own this pandemic issue or any of the other issues that are going on in the world, the global warming, countries in upheaval, et cetera, et cetera. We may be able to do a little bit to help if we all did it together, but really the things that we really can affect is looking at our own life and going, what can I do that's going to make me feel like I have some control and hope and everything. So I find lists to be ridiculously good for that, and this is an industry that thrives on lists. So we should be really good at that. Another one is creation. We are a creative industry overall. Our creativity shows up in many different ways. But if, the creation is a good antithesis to the destruction. So what can you create? What can you do to do it? Also seen, like last night, even as I was preparing to come into the studio today and I was writing some of these notes, there are a lot of these articles coming out, another sign to me that they see what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. This one was actually on NPR, National Public Radio, 6 tips for coping with COVID anxiety this fall and winter. And I thought, this is it. The fact that we're seeing these again is definite. And, some of the things they talk about, for, centering your soul and everything like that, reframing how you think of anxiety. And one of the things Pauline and I were talking about before we went on was, it is too easy to get sucked into the news. We don't watch a whole lot on TV, but when your phone is in your hand and you have any kind of news feed, which we do on our phones, I have found myself in the morning, switching to it real quickly, or even in the evening and the time in before, and I see it frequently taking a toll on me. It's getting to the point that I open the news to see which horrible story, pushed off what other horrible story. Are we talking COVID today? Are we talking wildfires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, wars, uh, just and it's like I've got to stop doing it, and I need to put reminders because I do it so unconsciously. I'm thinking about what reminders am I going to put in place to remind me when I'm sitting, like I sit in this particular same place every morning, probably most of you do, when I have my cup of tea, and I actually think I'm going to have to put a note there saying, don't read the news. And that may sound silly, but I need to be reminded of these things because I unconsciously forget and just automatically open that screen and start scrolling through it. And for years, I've read you should never read whatever the news a half hour after waking up or a half hour before you go to bed because that's the time your brain is the most impressionable. So, like, that's something I'm going to do. And they talk about, in this particular article, just to give you some examples, how you got to remember to connect with others. And one of the big differences between this winter compared to last winter, I know a lot of you created pods with like another family or something like that, is I had read a piece the other day and they're saying we can have groups in our house this year. If everyone is fully vaccinated and, whatever, that they are not saying don't have groups in your house this year. You have to know who they are even more than we did with maybe less, more. You have to know what people's behaviors are still. Have they been walking around without their mask? Have they been? But we can have gatherings of our family this year or our friends. And that's something that made me start thinking, I want a new rug so we can have people in our We ordered one rug. We had to send it back. Didn't work out. But, I'm thinking like, okay, what do we have to do if we're going to have, we haven't had people in our house basically in a year and a half, and it's kind of become a very comfortable, like I will spread out all over everything. So I need to rethink how to get the house together if we're going to have people over. But
Every flat surface.
Yep. It's a genetic trait in my family is what we know. It talks about, finding rituals. One of the things I started doing years ago, okay, so a lot of you probably follow mindfulness and meditation. Well, I'll be perfectly honest, I suck at it. And I discovered that years ago when I actually even tried, after saying, oh, this is stupid, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And I can't, those things don't work for me. But what I did do was find alternatives that for me helped me get centered and feel good and be able to start my day. For me, it was some kind of motivational reading. I always had a stack by where I would sit and have my tea, lived somewhere else at the time. And, I would have my 4 or 5 books that I knew would, lift my spirits, make me feel good to start my day, give me hope, give me focus. And, I've been thinking I need to do that. Plus, now there's so much stuff online. Like I'm going to look up even videos and audios. There's one particular professional speaker who I've known for years, Willie Jolly, and he does a motivational minute every day. And I love Willie. He's an essential part of my speaking career and my business. We got to know each other a little over 20 years ago, and he always lifts me up. And I'm like, you know what? I need to schedule time this has got to be my routine. I need to create a new routine that will take care of me. Cup of tea, play the game I'm obsessed with, not go to the news, listen to something motivational or read a motivational book or both. Also exercise. I always gain a good minimally 10 pounds in the winter. And so I'm trying to figure out, and I haven't lost the ones from last winter. So, I've got to figure out what I need to do between now and winter to be healthier, knowing that, and what can I do inside to be healthier. And I'm not talking about COVID health. I'm talking about just in general. So I'm looking at revamping my morning routine. So I start the day out better to get me through and adding creation in. I'm trying to add creative days into my schedule. And, just things that I know will lift me up and help keep me going. So that's something I strongly urge you to do. And, one of the things this article also says is accept that the new normal is going to be abnormal. And I think that's That's really important too. It's not going to be what we wanted even a year ago, even when we thought everything would be completely different because of the vaccine. We're not there yet. We're just not there yet. So it's all trying to keep the anger and the frustration and everything can be tough, but that's why looking for alternatives to help support you in a different way, I think is real important. On the professional slash personal thing, one of the things I heard a huge amount in the past 18 months from people who took my CMP class or I was working with on, in guiding sessions through the other part of my business and job searches and things like that. But in the CMP, I heard it a lot. But other forms of education, people were going for other credentials and certificates. How's that? Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Liz, for getting the right vocabulary in our mouths here. I had so many people say I wanted to do the CMP for years, or it could be many, many other different educational things. Wanted to do this for years and never got around to it. Couldn't because I was traveling. Now's perfect because a lot of people were furloughed or laid off entirely, or they weren't traveling for their job. And so now they could make it to classes. They could do things. So one of the things I found myself doing the past couple months is kind of beating myself up at times of the things I thought I would do in the past 18 months that I still somehow haven't gotten done, and I'm not really sure how. But I do know I have come in the past couple days to realize part of it's because I did a lot of other kind of really cool and great things. So that's okay, but it still pisses me off that I haven't done some of those things that are on my list from last March. And I need to take that out and revisit it. But the main thing is as this summer, as things got busier and people started working and traveling and everything, I could see people talking less about, oh yeah, I think I want to do my CMP or my whatever. I don't want to list one credential other than the ones I'm affiliated with and insult anyone else. But here's the thing. If you didn't do your CMP or whatever it is, what other educational or something to move your career forward, rewrite your LinkedIn page, redo your resume, start a job search, whatever it is, and you're thinking you missed your chance because the world is opening up again, well, the world's going to take a nap again for a while. So, maybe that's a good place to go. The nap. That's what we're going to call it.
Yeah,
it's a nap. That's what it is. It's a temporary.
A long one.
It's a long one, little Rip Van Winkle-ish, but, we're definitely taking a step back. And, don't give up on that thought. Again, next 3 to 6 months are going to resemble heavily what we went through, last year. Think about, how you're going to feel at the end. And I watched people do that. It was like, oh, if nothing else good came out of this horrible situation, I finally got my CMP, or I finally did this, or I finally did that, or I went and looked for a new job, or I just rethought out anything and everything. Do that for yourself. We talked a lot about the people who passed in 2020 is that, well, at least we know one good thing came out of 2020, and we needed to know that. We didn't really know that 2021 was going to be some version of it. But don't let yourself be disappointed again. Whether you want to call it the lemons and lemonade thing, whatever it is, but you can create good stuff out of the situation, but you have to consciously think about it, figure out what works. Like I said, I'm revisiting my morning routine. So I start out in a better way, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I'm going to literally write notes to myself because I have discovered I remember one thing one day, and then the next day I remember another one, but I'm never doing all the things that would really work together. There's a book I love called Creating a Charmed Life by Victoria Moran. And one of the things I love in one of the pieces she writes is she talks about when you're in a bad place or whatever, create a list of things that have worked in the past to get you out of it. Because when you're in that bad place, you don't remember any of them. Like, everything has always been crappy, and you've never gone through anything that's crappy before, and you have no idea how to get out of it. But she said, create a list and put it in your drawer, or put it so when you feel bad, that you can literally pull the list out. I know some of you are going to put it on your phone, whatever. But the main thing is to have it where you can remind yourself. Sometimes not having it on your phone might be good, because if you open a drawer like by your bedside or your clothing drawer or whatever, your laptop, and it's laying there on a piece of paper, you're more likely to remember it. So that's my recommendation for you. You know, I've been very honest in the past. I have definitely dealt, especially when I was younger, with major bouts of major depression. And there have been some adult years that haven't been really pleasant either. So that's, I guess, why I mean, I am a planner. So I'm more likely to look and say what's going to trigger something, and try to build a plan to either avoid it entirely or mitigate it, you know, lessen what will happen as it does. So, you know, just think about, how do you take care of you? And I'm not a big fan of, don't forget to take care of yourself. Those are fighting words. I'm intelligent. I know I should take care of myself. It's just I always can't figure out how or why. So maybe some of those ideas, you know, help. Eating a whole chocolate cake sometimes does too, but it has other repercussions. Or a whole bottle of Nutella. But anyway, so those are some of my thoughts. Anything you want to add, Pauline or Steve? Or
Don't worry, be happy. Hakuna Matata.
Okay. Steve doesn't really let things really wear on him the way I do, so it's probably good. Probably good. We carry things very, very differently. But go ahead.
I mean, I think it all goes for personal and professional, even if it's not. You talked about CMP and certifications and certificates and all that. There might be some things that you haven't done in your personal life that is just like, maybe I should start doing that. I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I could learn how to play music or that type of stuff. Give it a shot. I mean,
yeah, for me, one of the ones I thought about was learning a language.
yeah. Yeah,
Because I hate the fact that I only
that.
speak one language.
I picked up embroidery, which it was a random thing. I just was like, I'm gonna start. You know, I didn't have class for a while. I didn't have a job, so
But
might as well do something.
And it's creation.
It's creation.
In the face of destruction. And who was the Olympic diver from Great Britain who was took up knitting?
Oh, really?
Tom,
Yeah, I don't know. But
I think it was Tom Daly. He took up knitting in the middle of all this, because what else are you going to do, right?
Yeah, and it turned out to be a great tool for anxiety. And anytime it's like, you know, sometimes you just need little hobbies, and I think it's a great time to start picking them up, because if, you know, you don't have that much else to do and you're stressed about everything else, about work and what's not happening at work, I think is mostly what it is now.
Yeah.
Might as well fix some things in personal life. Or
Totally agree with you. And again, creating something, whatever that is, food, embroidery, anything where you're creating something, it is very fulfilling. And what that is for different people is, you know.
You know, I read something very interesting about stress baking. I do that a lot.
Okay.
And what it is basically in a matter of an hour or two, you complete something.
Yes.
You started something and you finished it, and that's why so many people stress bake, apparently.
Makes total sense again, and it's right in that creation mode.
Yeah.
I created something when everything around me is being destroyed.
Yeah. So if it feels like things are moving along, maybe that's what, you know, you need to do, is just start something short, a short project, and do it.
Yep. I totally agree with you. You know, I mean, the reality is we have to take care of ourselves personally first.
So next week we'll have some baked goods.
If
here.
you want to. Yeah. Yeah. I love baking. I mean,
I remember you said cooking isn't your thing so much, but baking is.
baking, the best purchase I made during COVID was my KitchenAid.
Oh, you bought one of them, the big mixer.
I'll see,
He
cook.
bought a pasta maker a couple of weeks
I
ago.
Cook.
I-
I cook. I don't bake, but I cook. Baking is too exact for me.
Do
I
a
like
lot
a
of
little
good.
bit of this, a little bit of that. you know.
Yeah, it
You know,
doesn't. I keep trying to explain to him that doesn't work really well with most baking ingredients. You
Yeah.
know, you can change the cinnamon, you can change, but you can't really be changing baking powder, baking soda, flour, you know,
Yeah.
key things doesn't work real well. But you know, create something, and that could be so many different things. Maybe that's why TikTok videos became big. The one thing that, you know, is do something, and it's real easy with our phones and everything to go down these rabbit holes of, you know, I have so many people say, oh, I'm on TikTok for hours just watching videos, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Just make sure they're ones that are lifting you up, or you know, somehow doing it, and you know, maybe it inspires you to make a TikTok video, or but I'd say plan ahead. Right now, we're kind of at, depending on where you live, kind of at this borderline of where we were and thought we were going to be, and where we're probably not going to be for the next few months. So I really think planning for you and those maybe that you live with to figure out how to make these next 3 to 6 months go better based on what we learned last year, and you know, maybe new things we've learned, but yeah, this is figuring out what's going to work for you. But I think it's easier to figure it out ahead of time than when you're in the midst of it, just like any kind of meeting crisis or anything like that. Just look ahead and say, oh, wow, this is how it impacted me. And this is what I know now, and how can I make it better for this year? So those are, hopefully that helped in some ways. As you can tell, I'm working on this myself, and if I come up with any brilliant ideas, I will share them with you in the future of how I am going to do this list, though, in the morning. And the first thing it's going to say is don't read the news, and take it from there. So anyway, that's it from me, and thank you again for listening and stopping by and joining us, and I hope something here was useful for you. And on so why don't you two say goodbye, and I'll sign off.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe. Stay happy. Hakuna Matata.
Oh, I was going to say that.
You can sing it together.
sing it.
Go ahead, both
I
of you
don't
do
know
it together.
all the words. You start.
I don't know the words either.
Hakuna Matata.
Matata.
It's a worry-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Well, you tell Mom and them, listen in, and we'll leave the light on for you.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what the next one is. Anyway, please know I'm thinking of all of you. I'm thinking of all of us as we figure out professionally and work-wise and meeting-wise how to take care of each other. But I also really do care very strongly about, you know, taking care of each other personally. And those of you who have had any interaction with me probably know that very much. So do take care. And again, thank you for joining us on this. And we will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.